Hi everyone, Bob Whitaker again from History Respawned, doing a brief Let's Play with Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the new Assassin's Creed game set in Victorian London, 1868. So I just want to spend a moment here going through the context, historical context for this game, and then also some of the major historical figures that you run into. So 1868 is really kind of the high point for the Victorian age. By this point, Britain has established itself as the dominant economic power in the world. It more than doubles the economies of its continental rivals, including Germany and France. Really doubles their economies combined. And it is enjoying incredible economic success, not only because of industry, but also because of financial capitalism. Britain's been able to use its financial wherewithal to establish influence throughout the world, not only in the British Empire and the British colonies, but in other countries as well. And this is an age in which Victorians living in London and throughout Britain are enjoying a sense of superiority. And the superiority, this self-righteousness, is not only the result of this kind of tremendous financial and industrial success, but also the result of political stability. And during the 19th century, famously, the Victorians are able to avoid a lot of the political turmoil that was so common throughout Europe, particularly on the continent in countries like France, Italy, and Germany. And it did this through a number of ways, not least of which was progressive reforms during the 19th century, which help to mitigate, help to ameliorate some of the anger, some of the class division between the establishment and workers during the 19th century. And it's interesting, this game is set in 1868 because just a year prior to this, in 1867, you had the passage of the Second Reform Act, which went a long way towards, kind of avoiding ongoing class struggle by expanding the voting franchise to include a large number of working class men. In no way am I arguing that, this Second Reform Act got rid of all of the class divisions within Victorian society. It did help Britain to avoid the kind of dramatic revolutionary divisions that you see in countries like Germany and Italy and France at this time. So that kind of gives you the historical context. Now let's take a moment to take a look at some of the historical figures that you run into through the course of this game. Just like with previous Assassin's Creed games, you've got historical figures who are providing the protagonist with quests, with side missions, sometimes main story missions. The allies that Ubisoft has chosen for this version of the game, they make up, kind of a who's who of eminent Victorians in 1868. Kind of one of the more important ones that you come into contact with is Alexander Graham Bell. Again, a famous Scottish inventor, would reach, kind of the height of his fame inventing the telephone in North America. But he's here briefly in London before making his way to the New World. And funny enough, this is kind of an awkward thing, is that he serves as the cue to the main protagonist as James Bond. So he serves the player character as kind of technological quartermaster, providing the player with new gadgets, new weapons to use against the Templars. So his inclusion is a little a little awkward, I would say. But I think we can forgive Ubisoft a little bit of artistic license. In addition to Graham Bell, we've got the two famous Victorian Charleses. We've got Charles Darwin, famous for his work on evolutionary theory, his major work on the origin of species, published in 1859. So in 1868, he is not only incredibly famous, but also beginning, I would say, by the late 1860s, beginning to enjoy a lot of support. Initially when his work came out, incredibly controversial, a lot of critics. Some of that criticism is actually portrayed in this game, where there's a depiction of Richard Owen, one of his major rivals, scientific naturalist rivals. But by the late 1860s, going into 1870s, Darwin and his theories are beginning to gain a lot of traction and acceptance within Victorian society. Charles Dickens, of course, probably the most famous Victorian, and famous for his nonfiction and fictional work, so heavily set during this age. And I think it's important that this game is set in 1868 because just 2 years later, Dickens would pass away from a stroke. So I think that might have played into Ubisoft's decision to set the game in 1868 rather than later. We've also got Florence Nightingale, who's already gained fame at this point from her work in the Crimean War, and is now based at this point in South London, working to kind of popularize notions of sanitation, also working to popularize the field of nursing, and working a bit with helping downtrodden civilians within the city of London improve their livelihoods, their lives, and their sanitation. Also, personal favorite inclusion of mine, Frederick Aberline, famous member of the London Metropolitan Police, one of the bases for Sherlock Holmes, Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes. Aberline, famous Metropolitan Police detective, and particularly famous for his use of disguises to infiltrate not just criminal organizations, but also worker unions in London during this time period. Of course, as it mentions here in the biography, you've become famous as one of the lead inspectors in the Jack the Ripper murders. Finally, we've got Karl Marx, expat from Germany, had stopped over in France during 1848, during the year of revolution, but then had been forced into exile and had made his home in England, where he picked up work with Frederick Engels. And I would say that the depiction of Marx in this game is kind of jarring, maybe a bit controversial. Ubisoft doesn't seem to have much respect for Marx's ideology. For instance, here you can see in the provided database biography, at the end of the second paragraph, they describe Marx's economic writing as real page turners, right? So kind of sarcastically referencing Marx and his work. And by this point, 1868, Marx has begun work on his magnum opus, Das Kapital. And interestingly, in this game, they portray Marx as someone trying to rile up, revolutionary fervor amongst the workers. But for the most part, Marx lived a pretty quiet, sedate life going into his work in Das Kapital. And he's also beginning to split from the more violent socialists who are working on the continent, and definitely kind of separating himself from the emerging anarchist movement, which he sees as kind of too destructive to be useful. So Marx in this game, again, Ubisoft doesn't seem to have real respect for him, kind of mocking him a bit in the database. And his portrayal in this game, he's almost seen as a bit of a buffoon. So that's a bit of a disappointment. But let's see if we can take a moment here to get a look at the representation of Charles Darwin in this game. So again, this is a side mission, and one of many that Charles Darwin and the other characters provide. It's a very common loading screen there with Big Ben chiming in the background.
I didn't know you had a twin sister, Mr. Fry.
Evie Fry, sir. It's a pleasure.
Usually I would reciprocate the sentiment, Miss Fry, but today I'm afraid nothing will bring me pleasure.
What's troubling you, sir?
I am used to people challenging my ideas. In fact, I live for it, the current and thrust of spirited debate.
Oh boy.
Lately, however, attacks against my reputation have taken a darker turn. Threats of violence against
So again, by this time, Darwin, incredibly famous, his ideas are gaining purchase throughout society, but there are still a lot of people who resist his notions, particularly on religious grounds.
We help each other, sir.
And what's weird about this is that, these assassins are ostensibly supposed to be doing, kind of clandestine work, but they're hanging out with Charles Darwin and Charles Dickens, who are incredibly famous and would, stick out like a sore thumb even in the very crowded streets of London.
A very important fossil, you see. In fact, he should arrive at Charing Cross any moment now. Would you ensure no harm comes to him?
So we've got to protect a fossil for Charles Darwin.
And make sure you get that fossil.
Splendid. But please do be careful.
Man, it looks like we're going to go to Charing Cross in order to do that. So, again, these are, one of many side missions provided by these characters. Not all of them include a cutscene like we saw before, but again, there's plenty of opportunities in this game to have these Victorian characters act out a bit, and I'm not sure that the portrayals in these games are striving for historical accuracy, but I think that as long as these games at least provide some sort of introductory knowledge of these figures and get players interested in the time period and these figures and their ideas, then I think you can forgive Ubisoft a bit of historical license. So I think I'm going to stop it here, not go into this mission, who knows how long it'll take, but I will be live streaming more of my playthrough of Assassin's Creed Syndicate starting tomorrow when live streaming opens up, and I think I'll do that coverage on my YouTube page. So if you're interested, please check into History Respawned on YouTube, and thanks for joining me.